Welcome to Talent Matters, the talent management podcast from PSI. We are the world's leading talent experts, working with clients across the globe to screen, select, develop and engage, delivering over 30 million assessments every year. The world of work is changing at an increasingly rapid pace, and we want to share our leading insight to discuss the main challenges organisations are facing in 2021. In our first series, we will focus on assessment and selection in the reshaped world of work, inviting our guests to talk about their real-world talent challenges and how they have overcome them. Our aim is always to focus on practical takeaways for you. So thank you for listening. Welcome to today's episode, and today I am really pleased to introduce Andrew Bell from Social Care Wales. Welcome, Andrew.
Thank you very much. Yes, hi there. So I'm Andrew Bell. I lead within Social Care Wales on a programme called We Care Wales, which is the national attraction, recruitment and retention campaign for social care and early years.
It's fantastic to have you here, and we've worked together for a long time now, since 2012, and fair to say I think we are very proud of the work that we've collectively achieved over the years. So just want to give our listeners a bit of an overview really on what we've done with you. So we've developed together a freely available situational judgment test, which looks at values, attitudes and really the attributes needed from the sector and for those using care services. And hopefully you'll be able to tell us a little bit more about, why was that a solution that was good for you as an organisation, and what really prompted you to go with this kind of test?
Well, we within the care sector, we have a challenge in regards to how we kind of recruit people, how we bring people to come into the workforce, and the challenge being finding the right people. So the right people with the right kind of values and attitudes, and that aspect far outweighs the sort of the experience or the skills or even qualifications that they might bring to the table on their entry into the care sector. It's much more about the person and who they are. So that's always been a challenge about how do we help find these individuals. And then the second kind of aspect, which kind of really helped us kind of consider this approach and be part of this approach, was actually another part that people don't really understand what it's like to work in care. And we know from hearing from employers that there is an issue around almost a revolving door of people kind of coming in, thinking it's one thing, it being something else, then coming back out because it isn't a fit. So a questionnaire care, this tool is absolutely incredible fit for all of that, really, because we found it's such a good tool for people to connect with. Because it has a range of different roles that people can select. They get an opportunity to see the world of care, almost like a fly on the wall version, watch a scenario play out, which is really helpful to get a sense about what that environment's like. But the really powerful part, of course, is then when the situations or the scenarios play out, they will obviously pause at a poignant point, and then you'll be presented with options about, well, what would you do next in this situation? And that's for me, I think that's the real strength in it, because that's where the values test comes into play. And that's where the reflection comes into play, as people look at it and they get to see and think back on themselves. What would I do in that situation? And I think it's great. And obviously by going through the resource, it then can produce a report, which helps people kind of capture what how they've answered, and it gives them support. And well, you answer this, but you might want to think along these lines or whichever way around. And it helps them in determining if they are a fit for working in care to some extent, I suppose, but also really a chance for them to, as I say, reflect back on their values base. And we found this has been so important. And, we're hearing from many employers and our regional leads who utilize it as well. It's an absolute critical tool because we have it. Obviously, it's there on the website. There's a questionnaire care. I think it's questionnaire.org, but there's a website that houses the resource itself. And we've used it at events. And what's been really interesting to see is actually the engagement from pupils in using it, because there's a real aspect in regards to not only kind of connecting with people who are out there in the sectors looking, out there and actively looking for employment, but how do we help the next generation of our workforce? There's people who will be looking for work potentially the next year or in a few years to come. And the response from people that are using it has been really positive, and it's been brilliant. And we, in one example, just to give a flavour of it, there are a series of sort of 5 or 6 scenarios, and they were only asked to just do one because it's time permitting, and the pupils wanted to go right the way through it. So it's very engaging, and I think that's important for these kind of resources.
Absolutely, and it's great to hear that kind of candidate feedback, isn't it? Because you mentioned there that really one of the main things that you get out of it is this idea of candidates being able to self-select using examples, getting a real flavour and sense for what the job is really like. And from the outside, we might have a perception of what care work is, but actually putting them in some quite challenging scenarios, which you think perhaps you might be able to deal with, but when faced with that question or the what would you do next, actually it's really getting them to reflect and challenge them to think about, what would I do next? Well, how would I respond
Mm.
in this situation if this was real to me? So really using it as a tool to attract those candidates who are a better fit for the requirements of care work. And you're hopefully starting to see the benefits of that in terms of the quality of candidates that you're getting now.
Yeah, we are definitely. I think we also located this whole tool within our job site that we have as part of a kind of our web offer, and we put it in play there because actually we felt that as people who come and look at the jobs list, obviously what we need to do is not it's not just about opening a floodgate to drive people to potential vacancies. Otherwise, we'll have that ongoing issue about people coming back out. But we built this tool to be one of the key steps that people take even before hitting apply, and that's been really helpful, and employers find that really helpful as well, because they found that, yes, obviously the people that are coming to them then, in the main, have that right kind of values base, which is what they're looking for, but also the ability for the job seeker to use the report as part of that application process. Is great because, again, we've been hearing from employers that there is certainly no issue with the volume of applications for roles. In some cases, so 50 applications for one post. The numbers can be there.
Mm.
Their challenge is, well, how do you select from this pool of applications who might be the 10 you want to speak to or the 5 you want to take to the next step? And the report that's produced through Question Care really helps that decision-making process because it gives them an insight to the individual. So the benefits work both ways. And I think that's a real value of a tool like this. It's really helpful for somebody out there who's just doesn't understand the world of care, doesn't really understand what it's about, or even hasn't really reflected on their own values, to enable them to go through that process. But actually, by doing that, the benefits then for the employer is significant, because then not only we're almost like a positive filter to bring the right people to them, but actually the opportunity for them to have an understanding of who the people are when they make that selection process.
If you are inspired by this conversation, you might be interested to learn more about Capture, our innovative values-based assessment. Using Capture at the start of your hiring process can evaluate how well a candidate's values align to the values of your organisation. Inspiring your candidates using our branded visual assessment can boost engagement with new hires and promote a clear view of what to expect from your workplace. You can also streamline recruitment by aiding self-selection from the outset using this short and engaging questionnaire similar to a social media feed. Once completed, candidates immediately get feedback and a fit score based on the alignment of their values with those of your organisation. So add Capture to your screening solution and start using your values to excite the people who will really thrive within your organisation. To arrange a demo of how this could work for you, head over to psionline.com/talent. You touched on a key point there around the number of applications, and I suppose it would be remiss of me not to think about the context that you've operated in as a sector over the last 18 months. And, we've all seen, rightly so, a big focus on the care sector. And I suppose I might logically conclude from that the volume of candidate applications has increased over the last year. If that is the case, how are you kind of managing that candidate volume coming through?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, the current climate, which we're still not out of yet, but it's heading certainly in the right direction for us all, has had a real impact on the sector. Has had a real impact in regards to the volumes. And yes, there certainly were more applications coming through because of other sectors essentially almost going on hold or hitting that kind of that static position, I guess. The challenge that we have is, yes, absolutely. So the volume is always difficult. So you need to work on tools like this that can help filter that volume to enable you to make decisions that hopefully then lead to really successful appointments. But I guess the challenge we've got moving forward is, as the rest of the sectors re-establish themselves, and rightfully so, as we're starting to see hospitality, tourism, all of those elements beginning to pick back up pace, the pool of people will diminish because obviously people will look at other opportunities. So it's about how do we connect with people who now have a breadth of options for them to consider care as one of their opportunities to consider, really. And I think, by allowing people to experience it through this virtual format, but a very effective format, I think is a really good method for that. So that people can then, and you're right, there's that perceptions about working in care, and sometimes often misperceptions around it as well. And it's about how do we help support people kind of think around it and see it for what it really is, and then make a judgment on what their choices would, what they'd like to do. And I think that the question care tool plays a really key part in that process.
Absolutely. And I know you and I discussed previously as well about, that kind of reducing number of applicants because, the rest of the economy is opening up and heading in the right direction, as you say, but also having to deal with that decline potentially, or attrition of individuals who perhaps have worked in care for the last 18 months, and actually you're starting to see a little bit of burnout. And so balancing that with attracting new applicants, but also, refilling potentially existing positions, and then using this as an opportunity, I guess, as you say, to use the website to reach out to new communities, new diverse pools of candidates. So what sort of other ways are you reaching out to different communities?
Well, I mean, there's a range of approaches that we're adopting, and if I'm honest, it's a growing area that we can always do more, and I really take that as important kind of validation of what we're doing. That there's always areas to really kind of focus in on, but there are specific communities to connect into, and I think the way that we found to be most effective, obviously there are channels, there are the usual kind of, you have social media as a platform, radio, TV, visual adverts in places that would hopefully catch people's kind of sideline, which are great, and that can reach to a certain amount of the audience. But to reach maybe some of those harder to reach kind of communities or aspects in regards to some of those sort of targeted groups, then it's about working with others who can then pass that message on. And that's what with our kind of attraction work around the care sector, we try and kind of connect with as many of those almost like influencers or connectors, almost, I suppose, isn't it, to kind of help us reach out to those other parts of the communities that are out there.
Yeah, it's definitely it's worth exploring all these new avenues, isn't it? And I think we're hearing from a lot of our clients around just, where's the talent gone? There's this big shortage, even in the hospitality sector, things are starting to reopen, but actually, where's everyone gone? There's no staff available. So it's finding those avenues to explore and to find communities that perhaps you wouldn't have reached out to previously, because it's out there somewhere. It's just a case of tapping into it. So I think as an organization you are unique in some ways, but there are so many parallels that can be drawn to other organizations who are facing a bit of a talent shortage right now. And it's really great to hear how you've used this tool to showcase what it's like to work in your organisation, but also what the type of work is really like, so that when you are getting people applying for the roles, you're getting the people who really, really align to your values. So I'd really be interested to hear, for you, what are the kind of top tips you might share based on your experience for other organisations facing similar challenges?
I think there's a few things that come immediately to mind. One is to not lose sight of the next generation of people. There's a lot of effort and energy into the current kind of workforce pool, which rightfully so, absolutely, because we need to resolve the here and now, but actually not to lose sight of actually the next generation coming through. So we do have a channel of work that's focusing with schools and working with those kind of age ranges to really help them consider. The other part actually is to think about almost different groupings. Like there are groups of people who maybe are, say, 50 plus, the career changes, people who are looking for, and they may be people to kind of connect with and to reach out to. And of course, it's thinking about helping people from other areas outside your own sector that you could reach out to. And helping them consider it. And a great example that we picked up recently was a gentleman who used to be, I think he's a flight attendant and now works within a care home. And he's very happy, fulfilled in his role. And it's a very positive change. And I think there's that interesting dynamic that actually in an ideal world, you'd like to see that fluidity across all sectors, actually, to allow people to really migrate to where there's kind of their values and their skills and at their right place, I guess. But it's helping people understand it. And I think the challenge we always will have, this probably is true for a lot of the sectors, I guess, is public genuine understanding of what that sector really is and understanding what are the real roles in that. If you think of the building sector, it's not just about bricklayers, or it's a much more than that, and it's helping people understand that breadth, understand why that job is important and what that means to the people who do those roles, and then by doing that, hopefully then can connect with more people to kind of join those sectors.
I think that's such an important point. There are so many individuals who, sadly have been out of work or actually started to reevaluate the role of work in their life during, the COVID experience, and think about, maybe changing careers. I think that's a really important point though. Maybe people who've been in careers for 20, 30 years have either been made redundant or just reevaluating where they're at and when they want a more values-based career, for example. So, really important and great top tips there. Thank you so much for sharing. And thank you for joining us today, Andrew. It's been lovely to speak to you. I would strongly encourage anyone who's listening to visit the Question of Care website, aquestionofcare.org.uk, where you can see some of this in action. Otherwise, thank you, Andrew, for joining us today.
Thank you.
If you would like to hear more about the solutions discussed in today's podcast, or you would like to join a future podcast discussion, please visit psionline.com/talent. Thank you for listening.